Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a deeply unsettling case that sits right at that blurry, chaotic intersection of criminal law and severe mental illness. We're going to break down the absolutely chilling transformation of a beloved, sunny morning news anchor into a woman accused of a horrific murder. But, as you'll see, this is way more than just examining what happened on that terrible day. We're going to unravel how the justice system actually grapples with and, frankly, sometimes wildly contradicts itself over the psychological competency of a defendant. She had to stab the mother to save herself. That was the chilling message a 911 dispatcher relayed to responding units on Halloween 2025 right in Wichita, Kansas. Imagine walking into that scene. When police arrived, they found a woman literally covered in blood, holding a towel and actively claiming self-defense. That woman? 47-year-old Angeline Mock, or, as many of her viewers knew her, just Angie.
The contrast here is just jarring. Angie Mock had spent a super bright, successful decade in broadcasting. She was a rising star. She spent years paying her dues in smaller markets, places like Lincoln, Nebraska and Missoula, Montana, before eventually becoming a hugely popular morning anchor in major cities like St. Louis and Oklahoma City. I mean, people literally woke up to her energetic, positive presence every single day. But that sunny public persona, it stood in horrific contrast to what police found in her 81-year-old mother's bedroom. We're talking multiple kitchen-style knives and, bizarrely, a cheese grater, all just laid out on a bloody pillow right next to her mother, who had been stabbed multiple times.
And adding just a massive layer of tragic irony to this whole nightmare is the identity of the victim. It was Angie's own mother, 81-year-old Anita Avers. By all outward appearances, and definitely according to their social media footprint, they shared a really close, loving relationship. And here's the thing. Anita wasn't just a mother, she was a clinical therapist in Wichita who actually dedicated her entire professional life to helping people deal with mental health issues.
So in the immediate aftermath, Angie gives police a series of highly erratic, honestly bizarre statements. First, she claims she went into her mother's room to prep for a local TV job interview. Now, mind you, she had actually left the TV industry years prior to go into software sales, so that makes no sense. Then she claimed her mother called her bleeping Jesus Christ and said her mom started spewing venom right out of her mouth. Finally, she tells cops her mother was intensely jealous of this supposed job interview and literally chased her around the house with knives. I mean, these statements clearly point toward a severe, terrifying detachment from reality at the time of the killing.
Right away, this wasn't just your standard whodunit. It instantly morphed into a really complex question of psychological competency. Medical evaluations quickly revealed that Angie was suffering from severe mental illness. She was officially diagnosed with schizophrenia. And to make matters even clearer, it came to light that she had just experienced a massive escalation of these issues. In fact, she required a 2-week psychiatric hospitalization right before this fatal incident even took place. Because of this very recent severe history, her defense attorney immediately requested an evaluation. And this brings us to a really vital legal concept in canvas law: incompetency to stand trial. Basically, this means a person has a mental disease or defect that makes them totally unable to understand what is going on in the court proceedings or makes them unable to assist in their own defense. Based on her evaluations, in January of 2026, a judge officially ruled Angie Mock incompetent to stand trial. That ruling instantly hits the brakes and pauses all legal proceedings against her. Okay, now we have to talk about the timeline, because what's truly staggering here is just how rapidly this whole legal situation pivoted. In November 2025, right after the Halloween murder, the evaluation gets ordered. By January 2026, she's officially ruled legally incompetent. Now, usually, this means medical providers are going to spend a huge chunk of time trying to treat and medicate the defendant to eventually, hopefully, restore competency. But just 6 months later, in July 2026, the court abruptly rules she is now competent to stand trial. And then, shockingly, in August 2026, she completely waives her right to a jury trial and just pleads guilty to first-degree murder.
This incredibly fast turnaround brings us to a massive legal paradox. It is perfectly summed up in line 2 of Angie Mock's signed plea agreement. It reads, "I know of no reason why my mental competence should be questioned." Just think about that for a second. We have a woman with a highly documented severe schizophrenia diagnosis who was just legally incompetent a few months prior, sitting down and signing a legally binding document claiming she is completely, unequivocally mentally competent.
And to make that signature even more perplexing, let's look at the medications she admitted to taking on that exact same plea document.
On the form, she admits she hasn't taken any drugs in the last 48 hours, except for some very heavy mental health medications, primarily Abilify and lithium. Now, Abilify is a heavy antipsychotic used to treat schizophrenia, and lithium is a major prescription mood stabilizer. Yet, right there on the form, she checks a box stating these powerful medications do absolutely nothing to affect her ability to understand her rights or the immense consequences of pleading guilty to murder. It raises some really profound questions about her ability to truly comprehend what she was signing her life away to.
Which leads us to the giant elephant in the room. Why not plead not guilty by reason of insanity? If she was actively hallucinating about her mother spitting venom and referring to herself as a deity, it seems to a lot of legal commentators that an insanity defense was absolutely on the table for her. So why just take a plea deal for first-degree murder?
While the answer lies in the incredibly high bar for an insanity defense in Kansas, it's not just about proving you didn't know right from wrong. First, yeah, you have to prove the mental disease, but steps 2 and 3, those are the absolute hardest. You have to prove that the illness made the defendant completely unable to form the intent to kill and unable to premeditate the crime. Criminal defense attorneys will tell you this is a massive, almost impossible hurdle. Juries are notoriously unreceptive to the argument that someone committed a horrendous violent act on a family member but somehow shouldn't be held accountable because of a psychiatric excuse.
Because of that sky-high bar, we end up with this jarring contrast between the very messy reality of the crime and the legally accepted plea narrative. On one hand, we have the well-documented reality of the event, the severe mental health crisis, the vivid hallucinations, the bizarre claims of venom and intense jealousy. But on the other hand, we have this highly sanitized, cut-and-dry narrative that both the prosecution and defense agreed to in the plea document. It simply reads like this. Her stepdad left for work at 7:10 a.m. Anita was sleeping. Angie grabbed a knife, stabbed her mom to death, and called 911. That's it. There is absolutely zero mention of her mental health crisis in the agreed-upon facts of the crime. It's like it never happened.
The ultimate result of all this legal maneuvering basically comes down to a single number, 25. By pleading guilty to first-degree murder, Angie Mock faces a sentencing range of 25 years to life in prison. To put that into perspective, she is going to be in her early 70s before she is even eligible to be considered for parole.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, really provocative thought. Does a signature on a plea deal truly reflect a competent mind, or is it just the most tragic consequence of a broken one? You know, our justice system heavily relies on black and white documents, check marks, and signatures to process cases efficiently. But when you apply those rigid, unbending legal boundaries to the incredibly fluid, chaotic reality of severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, we're left wondering if justice was actually served here, or if the system simply found this fastest way to close a deeply uncomfortable file. Thanks for joining me to unpack this today, and as always, keep questioning what's behind the headlines.